All of our files are free and will remain free. If you like the show, you can show support by donating $1 to help with expenses. Just use the PayPal link on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Thanks.
Welcome back to part 2 of this very exciting program we have today, which is Deconstructing the Brown Eminence, which was Martin Bormann. And we have with us the investigative journalist Laurence De Mello. And we've been all over the place today, but there's many loose ends, and I think where we are at the timeline now is that we've agreed that Bormann has returned to, he's been let loose by the British, and he's gone to Brazil and Argentina. But before we continue with that timeline, Laurence, I have a few questions for you.
All right.
Let's start with, we were talking about the evidence for his survival, and you mentioned, I noticed you mentioned one thing that we haven't addressed in any other shows yet. So I wonder if you can expand upon that, and that's the dentistry lead.
Yeah. I never managed to track him down. And his name was Hugh Thomas, and he was a professor of pathology and dentistry. And he was one of the chaps that analysed the actual dentistry at the time of, later on when they were doing all the forensics. And he actually wrote a report that some of the dentistry within the jaw of Martin Bormann, and I do believe it was Martin Bormann that they found in 1972, was actually dentistry that could only have been performed post sort of 1950, because you know how dentistry sort of changes and it gets, you know, more.
Right. And it evolves.
Yeah, it evolves. So that was, you see, what happened was when they found the corpse and they used Hugo Blask initially, because they didn't have DNA then. Well, they had DNA, but they didn't have the analysis. They used the dentist of Bormann, and he was also the dentist of Hitler, Hugo Blask, to, from memory, do a sketch of Bormann's jawline and teeth, etc., etc. So he did that, and they identified that. And as you know, what they did, they published Martin Bormann corpse is found. But they failed to include, obviously, that there were irregularities for the timeline as to him dying in 1945. But what automatically happened was everybody assumed, oh, well, they found him there where they said he died in 45 and that he'd been there ever since, but he hadn't. He'd been taken back there, and there were some very important events.
Very clumsy way to try to. I believe they were in a hurry because this was a desperate reply to Manning and Farrago's book, because people were starting to get turned around by that. And so they needed to come up with some debunking, right?
Well, yeah, I think they waited for him to die, and then they waited for the right time. They had to put in the planning, remember, remember where he was found. You remember the details how he was found. He was actually found where workers were actually constructing for the ULAP playground or something. They were building a playground or something on there. So planning permission had to go in first. So I do believe that planning permission was all prepared, ready to put him back when the time was right.
And then they had to push it up in the schedule because of these books that came out.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yes. You know, they say, okay, the piglet is down or the white rabbit is down. Let's put everything in order. Somebody puts planning permission in. It takes 10 months or whatever. I think he probably died in 1968.
That early?
Yeah. 69 maybe, yeah.
Not 71. But there is this banknote. You know about the banknote?
No, tell me about those.
There is, he's signing, there's a paper trail for Bormann from 45 all the way, I think it's up to 1970. I think it's 1970. And I believe...
Oh, you're talking about the banking receipts and etc.
With his signature and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's another thing. You see, you have this stuff here, but it's going to be ignored because they say, well, how can you prove this is genuine? And also you're talking also about the receipts that were held here in Argentina. And it tells how much gold it was. And it was actually signed by one of the not a cardinal, but he was a priest from the Vatican. You know, the guy that signed this was also connected to the church.
Right.
A few of these papers. But we have that. But Al, how can we prove it? He did get out. There's only one way we're going to be able to prove this, and that's through science. And that is what my objective is, to track down, which I believe I have now. And I could be completely wrong that this lady in the USA is actually one of the children, but I think there's a lot of...
Oh, so she's in the USA?
One is, yes.
Then it's not the one they uncovered in the Hunting Hitler show?
Of course not.
There's probably a million daughters out there.
I don't know if that one they produced in the Hunting Hitler series was just something to go along with, because remember, it came out after I published the fact that I have a girl.
Yeah.
And you know.
Well, take a look at it. Who knows? I mean, you're closer to her, so you should check it out. I'll send you the link, by the way, when this is over.
Yeah, send me the link, because I'd be interested to see the series. As I said, I've seen a couple of bits, and of course, in fact, the producers were going to send me, but I said, look, don't worry, they're too heavy, the files. So I haven't even seen the interview that I put in.
You have to be patient, because it's very baby steps of progression. And they're spoon-feeding you. Most of it you know already. But it started to get interesting when they went over to Bormann, because it was all about Hitler in season 1. But in season 2, they started to face over to Bormann. And by the way, we have to recap another thing. Just for those who aren't that familiar, I mean, 50% of our listeners are American, actually, not Norwegians. So,
really?
Yes, so we're popular there, and they are very deep into this.
I have to be very careful what I say now.
You know, if something is on the internet, it will never go away.
Of course. Well, then I'm saying there's no love lost between Great Britain. But they should know that, You know, we're still paying. Do you know we only finished paying the bill for the loan that we had in 1946 from the USA for all the hardware that we had from the USA? But they assume, and I have to tell you, my American cousins, we actually paid for all of that. You know, it wasn't a freebie from you guys. It was great you came in the war, and it's great you came and helped us, but we paid the bill. We really did. We actually...
So much for the Marshall help, huh?
Yes. 2006 we finished. 2006 it took us.
I hear Germany is still paying to Israel.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Reparations? Well, I think so. I think they're still paying. I do hope, and everyone who lived back then is dead, I do hope the debt is over then.
I don't know about that.
Otherwise, it's only a serfdom.
Yeah, but anyway, so let's get back to Bormann, because I know that's actually what you're interested in.
Yeah.
So I tracked down Martin Bormann. My personal belief is he went to Brazil. He went to Mengele. If he meets up with his pal Mengele, who was in Candida Godoy doing his genetic stuff, now we know he was there. You've got all the evidence. You've got all the twins and the blonde, blue-eyed babies there. Yeah. Even today, it's the town with more twins than anywhere else, I think, certainly over here.
And that was Mengele's speciality, twins.
That was his speciality, genetic, and he was obsessed with it. So if you've got your pal, remember they were obsessed with the Fourth Reich and the creating the Aryan race. Doesn't it make sense that whether it was artificial insemination or natural insemination, Mengele is going to say, okay, could you inseminate these women or that woman or whatever?
Yeah, but I think Bormann would insist on the biological method because he was a womanizer.
He was a womanizer, I believe. And fathered lots of children. And there are stories about he had a lover here in Buenos Aires, this lady, which my colleague told me.
Okay, so you do concede that he lived in Argentina?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're just saying that he spent the first 6 years in Britain, then Brazil, and then he went to Argentina, presumably?
I think he first went to Brazil. He went to Brazil because they had a rat line that went through Brazil. Then he came over and down, probably through the Triple Frontier, and he went to Buenos Aires. He was received in Buenos Aires by Perón, and he was installed in the Plaza Hotel in Buenos Aires, which was owned by Germans. Wow. It was the equivalent of the most luxurious hotel in Buenos Aires at the time.
But didn't he hook up with Hitler, or did he never live in Bariloche, you think? What do you think about that?
No, I don't believe he had anything to do with Hitler after that. I don't believe he had anything to do with him after that.
So he abandoned Hitler completely then?
He didn't need him. What did he need him for? I don't think he needed him.
No.
And he's not going to, he's on a mission now. He's got a mission. His mission's changed. So I think he came down, he was installed in the Plaza Hotel, and that is where it comes in with my connection who is the Commissioner George Silvio Colotto,
Right.
who died in 2013, and he was an ADC to 7 Argentine presidents.
Wow.
From Farrell to Onganía, 7, through the whole lot of them. But he was particularly close to Evita's brother, Juan Duarte. And he was working for the intelligence services and the police, a career military man. And he was very young at the time when he was with Perón. And he was called to office saying that there was a duty he needed to do. And of course, they never asked any questions. It's on a need-to-know basis. And he needed to look after this particular person. And he also needed to go make sure they were safe, accompany him in the street, not in cars, walking. And he also was sent on, I think, every 3 weeks to a month to go and pick up the invoice, the charge, the room service and everything from the Plaza Hotel and take it directly to Perón, and Perón paid it out of his personal funds. He actually
do you believe they didn't want any economical trail to Bormann, so that's why?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if Bormann paid him, obviously he had the finances to pay for himself, but did they pay in order to cover, or was it just like...
Well, it's normal. You go anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you've got money or not. If you're the guest, the guest normally picks up the tab. You know, if you go and stay somewhere, You
mean the host? The host picks up the tab.
Sorry, the guest, the host picks up the tab, sorry. And that's normal that Perón would have sent somebody and said, bring me his bill and everything.
Right.
And also, and it keeps Bormann in a position that he's in a lower profile. He doesn't have to be dealing with monies at the desk.
But this guy, he met Bormann then, obviously. He must have seen him.
Absolutely. And he accompanied him. And he told me that he first met him in a house in Buenos Aires. And he was standing outside and he had to take the chap in. And there was this 2-hour meeting between Perón and Bormann. And then he had to he came out and he sort of accompanied up the street to go. He didn't even get in the car. And he describes it. He knows it was Bormann. I mean, now he says it was Bormann. I said to him, why did you never talk about this before? And he said, I felt that it was betraying Perón to talk about it now. Right. And he revealed this to me in his later years.
On condition that you couldn't go out with it before he died, right?
That's right. How did you know about that?
And that just shows that he wasn't out for attention or anything. In fact, he he had to honor his pledge, or maybe fearing for his life, who knows, or maybe both.
Well, no, not for his life. I think he was concerned about his family. And
right.
What he did, he made it really difficult. He said, okay, I'll say, right, to make it safe for you, if I do this in your lifetime, I have to give you X amount of money. We knew that X amount of money would be absolutely impossible. But there was also an enormous amount of trust, because I'd built up a relationship with him over a couple of years. And he asked me, before I asked him about the Bormann stuff, to do a translation of his memoirs into English, which it never happened because it got very complex. And there were lots of various reasons going on. And it was only towards the end of that I said to him, George, you have to talk about this. And we discussed it. So I was very fortunate that he trusted me with that information.
That's quite a scoop. I've seen the interview online, or just a trailer for it.
What I did, and it served a purpose, you see, I totally hacked it to death. Okay. Because I wanted to draw attention to it. And of course, that's why Hunting Hitler came for me, because they knew I had it. So I gave them some of the unedited. Actually, they've got a lot of it there. And they used some of it. And the reason I put it on there, so it couldn't be reproduced. But of course, you've got to turn people on to ask and this is not all about money. I mean, if it was about money, Alv, I'd be in a much better position than I am. And you probably know this. A lot of the researchers like myself, investigators, we live sort of hand to mouth, because you're
spending more money than you're earning on these things.
Yeah, and we work we're so off the grid. Yeah. We're so off the grid because you cannot rely on one fixed sponsor, because you can't trust them. You don't know what their agenda is.
No, which is why you have to produce movies and books, and I'll ask you about that at the end.
Yeah,
because I think you need to come out with some stuff, because this is hot right now. But let's rewind. His name is what was it?
His name is who are you talking about? The commissioner?
Yeah, the old Perón.
George Silvio Colotto. Colotto.
Yep.
And he was a brilliant man. He was a really good man. He was imprisoned at one point because he went against the government. He was also participant in a great deal of the dismantling of the narcotic traffic that went up here on the Triple Frontier in the 90s.
Which means that he's an enemy of the CIA then, I guess.
Well, yeah.
Mm.
But a very brilliant man, also dangerous man. These are men that can pick up the phone
Yep.
and make things happen. But there is a change of the guard. I was talking with somebody about this the other day. I give information to, and they say, "But why now? And why did some come out with not?" And I really do believe the old guard, the old school, the old boys network, which my father or probably your father were part of. They did really do things in good faith. I really do believe Churchill did things in good faith. He did some really dastardly things. You do. What is it they say? All is fair in love and war.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do some really, really weird things, but I do believe they did it in good faith with the idea that you and I, we can live in a democratic, free world, a fair world. There's a new guard, both in the intelligence services and both what's going on. And these are the dangerous ones, this cabal. These are yes, there's always been a cabal. But when it comes to the intelligence services, now they're all mashed up together. They weren't before. Okay.
They're in, like I said to you before we started, they're inbreeding.
Yes.
They're degenerating.
Yes.
And they're also sort of a breakaway culture. So at least, there's Black Ops behind Black Ops. We talked about that too.
Yeah.
And I believe you need to have one foot in society to have some sort of identification. But the real problem, as I see it, is that when they were so almost criminally neglect or naive to let Martin Bormann go, if they didn't have any leverage over him, that they could control him, then they kind of are complicit in what happened, because he built up this huge empire economically.
But they were part of it.
Yeah, so they're in bed.
They weren't negligent. That's the whole point. He was their account. He went out and did the stuff he needed to do, and they'd had him long enough.
Yeah, money went through Dulles company. What's it called in Wall Street?
Dulles.
Yeah, what's it called again?
What they called it? Oh God.
Sullivan and Cromwell, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, there's a big but that's just one of
many tentacles.
One of very many. As I said, Yuki Goni said 750 companies. So
750. Do you have any idea of how many money they started out with? I've heard different figures.
No, I haven't. I haven't. I don't think anybody can really have an idea. Well, they might have an idea, but I know where a lot of the money went.
But we're talking billions.
But the other stuff.
We're actually talking billions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, of course.
And that's in 1945 valuta.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, the findings on the Dulles link between Bormann and the USA, it's entirely correct. It's entirely correct.
Sure.
But anyway, yes. Yeah,
so let's move on. Let's move on. I want us to touch base with Heinrich Müller.
Oh.
Because that's another famous...
Now, I'm just wondering if I'm a solipsist, because you said divine providence, this coming into my hands. Yeah. Now, I have to be careful. I do have to change some things on this because it's so embryonic. Okay. It could be a total long shot. Uh-huh. So, obviously, Heinrich Müller was the chief of the Gestapo. Nasty piece of work. He disappeared. No, but they also think that he actually left the Führer bunker, don't they? They believe that he was in there as well. He disappeared.
In fact, some detectives are tracing him and Kammler.
Yeah.
That those two were escaping together. And there are some interesting evidence for that.
Well, there was an article that came up which I found a little bit disturbing. Here we go again, back to sort of, it's not Simon Wiesenthal, but there was an article saying that they had found, I think it was a memorial to the German resistance. Mm-hmm. And there's this chap, Johannes Tuchel, I don't know how you pronounce it. He's claiming that Muller's body has been found in a mass grave in a Jewish cemetery in Berlin Mitte.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
Now,
typical debunking story.
Right. Now, I heard about that. Now, let me tell you what happened to me, and this may sound absolutely ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to me. Mm-hmm. I had to take, let's just say, a merchant who I buy things from, okay? A real genuine merchant, very nice man. and I have to pay him time to time to do things, as one does on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't really know what I do. He knows that I write, and he thinks I probably write things in the newspaper, about the Kardashians or something. And we were chatting one afternoon in the sunshine, and he said to me, "But what are you working on?" I sort of slipped it, and I said, "Oh, gosh, I've been all night dealing with the German intelligence network." And he said, "Oh, I knew one of them." I said, "Oh, really?"
Wow.
He said, "Yeah, I knew one here." Yeah. I mean, this is amazing, Al. I mean, this sounds really mad, even that it happened to me. I remember coming in afterwards, what happened to me, and I was like, this is not real.
Synchronicities happen. Let's just accept it.
Yeah, and he said, "Yeah, I knew one of these." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, a long time ago." And I said, "What was that?" He said, "Yeah, because I used to go to his home, and he was also working for this chap doing things in his home." And he said, "It was a long time ago." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Yeah, I know he was." He said, "Because he was very old, little tiny old man, never spoke, big nose, a tiny thing, beady eyes." I said, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "But I know he was a very important Nazi." I said, "Well, what makes you think that?" Because I was going, ooh, what makes you think that? He said, "Well, one day I had to do something in his room." He said, "But he had two homes. He had one home in the country, which I can't reveal where it is. One home in the country, a small little sort of place, with about 4 acres, a couple of dogs, some chickens and rabbits, and honey. Now, we know that Eichmann was also doing that stuff, rabbits and honey.
Beekeeping?
When he was here. Beekeeping, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he said to me, yeah, he used to give me pots of honey, and he couldn't speak very good. He just spoke a few words of Spanish. And I said, what was his name? He said, well, not many people knew his name, but I always used to call him Muller. I said, well, oh, okay.
The bell rang already there, right?
I'm not thinking, because I was thinking, oh, okay, no.
Too good to be true.
He said, yeah, well, it was Muller because I had to do some papers for him for something when he did this reconstruction. Yeah. So, and they're not that clever. Let me tell you what I'm saying. They were so arrogant, these guys. Now, it may not be what I'm saying.
They didn't even use code names, huh? Or pseudonyms.
But it gets better. This gets better. This gets much better. So,
okay, yeah.
I'm starting to sort of break out in a very... Ladies don't sweat, we glow, but I was sweating. So I said, oh, really? He said, well, I said, what makes you think that he was a Nazi? Did you have conversations? Because I'm trying to be very, not like excited because I didn't want him to shut down on me.
Of course.
He said, no, I was in his bedroom one day and he said he had this beautiful framed picture by his bed, like so 8 by 10 or something. Mm. And he said, there he was, in this silver frame, black and white photograph. His head, he said he had all this thing on, with the skull on the top. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, and he was really smart, with shiny boots on, and he even had like an iron cross around his neck. I said, whoa, and he said, yeah, it was very funny though, but he had shaved the sides of his head. His side of his head was shaved.
Wow.
So I then thinking, oh my goodness me. So I said, what was he? So I tried to slip him. I said, was he very tall? He was a tall guy, was he? He said, no, he was very small, beady, long nose. Now, we know that Muller was tiny. All right, could be anyone. Mm. So I decided to set him up. Now, first of all, I asked him about the property. And he was very nervous then. He got a bit nervous when I asked him where it was. Yeah. And there's a reason I can't reveal on here, but basically... the property's been handed over to an organisation to protect certain people, right. Which is interesting, the very property. Yeah. And the main house was razed to the ground. Now, Eichmann's house was razed to the ground. Mengel's house was razed to the ground.
Is that to get rid of evidence then?
No idea. Mm. Maybe just to cover it over and pretend it was never there. I don't know. Mm. But he told me he had 2 properties. He had one in this place, which is actually not very far from me. And one in Buenos Aires, in a wealthy part of Buenos Aires. Mm. He told me he had a wife. He had no children. The wife died before him, and he died when he was very old. And I said, well, he said, oh, this was years ago. He said, I think this was in the late 80s, he said. So I thought, how am I going to approach this? Because I need to know. And he said, so when he said about the photograph, he said, oh, what a beautiful photograph, because he's an Argentine. They don't give a damn about Nazis. It's not like, oh, Nazi. He said, oh, you were a very important man. what a wonderful uniform. You must have been very important. And he sort of hustled across the room and quickly took the photograph and put it flat in the drawer. And he said, that's not me. That's not me. He said, come on, you don't need to be shy. You can see it. He said, no, it's not. It's a cousin of mine. After that, he shut up. He wouldn't invite him back. He was the only man that could do the job he needed to do. And he didn't talk to him after that. He died and the house was razed to the ground. But part of the property was handed over to a government organisation. Now, I'm at the point at the moment where I'm trying to, because I'm not going to take that on face value. And the way I can do this is actually I'm not going to say what I'm doing. So.
No, but you're trying to corroborate it, right?
Yeah, of course. Now, what I did before I even go to that effort, because this is just a name, this is just a face, and this is just a photograph that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
So I said to him, come over one day. I'm just curious. I said, because I'd like to know, maybe that man is part of my work. It could have been that, I didn't make out some big guy. And I set him up with about 8 photographs of different guys in uniforms, which included Himmler and this one and that one. And I gathered various photographs of each character with some photographs in civilian clothes, also in uniform, and a couple that you can get. And I mixed them all up. And on my Mac, as you go across on the photo viewer, like click, click. And I said, if you recognize any of these faces, 2 he missed of him, and then 3 he recognized. The others he didn't recognize. He said, that looks like him. He said, but he was very, very old when I knew him. He was very, very old, but I think that's him. And he actually picked out from this group of, I'm sorry about the dog, this group of Nazis. Sorry.
But he picked up 5 photos of Muller. He recognized 5?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
You want to take care of the dog, or?
What, should we shoot it, or?
No, but I know if something is up, maybe check on him.
Okay, so I do apologise. All right, wait a second. If you don't behave, you're going out. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, back on track before we move on in the timeline.
Okay. Where were we? Muller.
Yeah.
Yes, go on.
Because anything considering Muller is interesting.
Yep. All right, then, let's go.
So Muller, then, if we are to believe this lead, then Muller must have been operating in Argentina too. Do you think he was in touch with Bormann?
Okay. I'm not even going there, Al. I'm not even looking at that. But if you think about it, I'm not even going that far down there. I mean, this is just something that dropped into my lap. It may have nothing to do with him. But the way this man revealed this stuff to me, and he got a little bit nervous afterwards when I asked for some details. I need some information. And I explained to him, look, it's just part of my history thing. And he said, well, the neighbor, he gets very nervous about it. You need to meet him really, because he was very close to him, the neighbor of this chap.
Neighbor?
Who's still around, who was much younger. And he sort of befriended him like a son. He said, I need to have a chat with him, but he gets very nervous about it. He's very protective. And I said, oh, don't worry about it. It's not a problem, because I'm not going to put the pressure on. But what I'm thinking, why would he not be here? He disappeared without trace. Most of them got here. The large majority got here. Why wouldn't he be there? So it wouldn't surprise me at all. And also the fact that this, very convenient that this chap, this Tuchel, says that he's in this mass grave. Again, Jewish cemetery, of course. They have to put that on to put the lid on it. And I don't know where he comes. Maybe he's got some really good information. I don't know, and I can't criticize the man, but I have to follow this lead and see where it goes.
Absolutely, you should talk with the neighbor.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But I can't go too far into it now because I will get cheese wired, and I've got too much.
Well, it's unfinished business, but you're on it.
I think I have to tell you, it's very compelling. There is more to it than that, but I can't reveal that. It's compelling enough that we think we've made some sort of grounds on that. But it wouldn't surprise me at all. But then again, of course, him being here has got nothing in comparison to Bormann. No. I mean, Bormann is the main man. He's the main man, as you say, the brown eminence. He is the man. Yeah,
but what we're interested in isn't so much to know where a random Nazi dude ended up in his old age. What we're interested in is to see who was on board with the Bormann Brotherhood, the Bormann Reich,
Yeah.
And that went on to found this enormous machine, this spectre, this octopus, this spinne that has taken over the world, basically. So,
yes.
So if Muller was in the loop...
We're not going to dismantle that. You do know that. It's just like the Diana thing. We're not going to be able to do that. But all we can do
it begins with awareness, doesn't it?
Of course it does. But there are certain things we are not going to be able to do. It's just not going to happen. There are things and ways that are put in place.
Yeah, but all empires fall, Laurence.
Let's hope.
And, maybe not in our lifetime, but don't underestimate the power of information, awareness, critical mass. Plus another thing. If the economy completely fails so much that you have to start from scratch, these people have not that much power anymore.
Well, I agree with you. And hasn't the dollar already gone down? How many percent in the last? I don't know.
Oh, we need a world crack. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've also got war looming on the horizon, haven't we?
It's there all the time.
Possibly. But yet, no, on the contrary, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that we have an objective, and the objective is about the truth.
Exactly.
And about, I tell you what really, do you know, somebody asked me the other day that I'm working with, and they said, but Laurence, why do you do this? Why about Bormann? What is this about? This is not about, I can tell you, Al, this is not about money, because I tell you what, it doesn't feed me this at all. On the contrary, it puts me in almost poverty.
And risk for your life.
And also travels and DNA. And because I had to get DNA from people in America, and I've also had to track down people on the other side of the planet, who I believe is one of Bormann's girls. I've got her and she's on board. So that'd be interesting. That'd be great if we get a match between the lady in the USA, the adopted girl, and one of the legitimate children.
Wow.
So I do feel very angry that children at school, particularly in the West, we grew up in this belief that, you know, like I grew up in a military family, but even so, anybody, cowboys and Indians, goodies and the baddies. I remember praying about the Jerrys, and we'd all hide from the Germans.
We too, in Norway too, because we were occupied, right? So
right, exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to play that because I was educated in Malaya, because my father was at submarine base there in Singapore, and I used to play Germans in actual fallout air raid shelters because of the Japanese, the conflict in World War II there. Yeah. So we grow up with that idea that everything we say is right and all the other side are bad. And this is also
black and white. Yeah,
black and white. But what really annoys me is how, if anybody, who are the historians that are teaching our children? And if you raise your head, Farrago, Manning, and Stevenson, right, okay. All these men, all of these guys that know their stuff, a group of very qualified men, legal team that came to Buenos Aires with Ladislas Farrago and looked at all this stuff. And then Stuart Stevens of the Daily Express, he publishes that, and they're all character assassinated. They're all lunatics. They don't know how.
And that's if they're lucky.
Yeah, if they're lucky. They don't end up like Manning's son. And what do? You get somebody like Guy Walters, who responds in a newspaper article, absolute rubbish, you know. Who are you? I'm a historian. Where do you get your historical facts from? Who feeds you the information? Because you know what? Let's be honest about this. The majority of historians today are just picking up material that's been written before them.
Oh, yeah.
They're not
but history was never a science. It was never a science. It's an interpretation art, right?
Yes, of course it was.
And by the way, like Levenda actually said on a show we had with him, he said that facts and truth are different. Truth is built up by facts. But if you have a lot of facts, that doesn't mean you necessarily have the truth.
You have the truth.
Right?
That's a very good statement, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like a puzzle. We need to find the right bits. We need to find all the bits, and they need to fit, and you can't force them in place. And science also tells us that if you can falsify something, you have to reevaluate your picture, right? But that's not what's going on, especially not in history. In quantum physics, maybe. But in history, they try to suppress facts because they don't fit the forced image they're building.
Yeah.
And so what can we do? We have to shoot them down. So they don't even need intelligence agents to pull the threads anymore. It's like a self-maintaining illusion they're all on board in. And they've invested, 20 years of their career, and everything is on the line here, right?
Oh, well, of course.
Comes a naive guy like we talked about before today, the one who debunked Hitler diaries. What's his name again?
David.
Yeah. Irving. Comes a guy like Irving, right? And you see what happens to him.
Yeah.
So, but, truth will out eventually. And programs like this, I think, can contribute to the greater picture. And research such as yours is so important.
Maybe.
In that regard. Now, let's go back to Bormann in Argentina.
Okay.
We haven't said anything about, where we are now is that we've established that he's alive and he's in Argentina.
Yeah, he came to Buenos Aires. So he was here at the end of 1952, he was here.
And he was loose? Do you believe he was loose, or do you believe they kept tabs on him?
Well, when you say loose, he had freedom to move around and do his thing. But of course they had tabs on him. They were following him. And in fact, somebody that I'm close to, and also Colotto confirmed this with me, and also another captain that I'm in touch with now, used to be the captain of the Port of Buenos Aires, actually worked for the CIA. And he told me the CIA were keeping tabs on him well into the late 60s here.
But did any of them know what he was up to, or do you believe he had that much autonomy that he could do whatever he wanted without them necessarily knowing it?
Well, I think if he's working with the same guys that are running the CIA, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're probably saying just keep an eye on him, who he's meeting, who he's not meeting, but he's working with them. He's working for the ones that have got tabs on him. So
but that's the question, you see. Who's working for who?
Who knows? Who knows? Who are you working for? Who knows? One never knows.
Posterity.
Bit like me then, join the club. I can't answer that. I don't know. All I can know is I love documents. Al, I love documents. And there's nothing like documents, really, or genuine documents, to give you a part of a puzzle that is legitimate. So, as I said, what I said to my colleague the other day, I'm not going to fill in, I'm not going to make up the bits I don't know, because it's completely detrimental to what I'm trying to do.
Of course.
And it would be dishonest.
But you're not afraid to speculate, as long as you're open with that's what you're doing.
Yeah, there are certain points you do guess, because you say you've got those three things on the table, and the only possibility, for example, you've got water in the middle, he had to cross the water, you understand? Then you say, well, how he did it, we're not quite sure, could it be that? So, of course you've got to speculate, you have to, but you've got to do it in a measured and responsible way. And what's happening, and listen, I probably get lots of things wrong. I know I get lots of things right. But the danger we have today, and it's great we have lots of people that are researching, investigating, and that's good. But with this enormous wave of truthers and way seers, there's some wonderful work going out there, but there's also a lot of dangerous stuff going on that is total
disinformation,
but not always deliberate disinformation. A lot of it is because people want to think they know, and they read a little bit and they assume everything's okay, and then they add it all up and it's all wrong. So they've got to take the time. But you and I are very privileged, because we're not doing anything special. It's just that we are privileged enough to be able to dedicate our time to this.
It's true.
Not many people have time.
No.
Most people have to focus on getting money to feed the children or whatever they've got to do, and it's hand to mouth. So they go out, work all day, as we know. That's what the plan is, that they're all sort of slaves.
Busy bees.
And all in debt. And you come home, you're absolutely shattered. You've probably got 2 hours. You haven't even got the energy to make love with the wife. And you probably pick up the TV control, you zap a few times. So do you really want to sit down and read, 20 chapters?
Oh, I have to correct your narrative there, because that's the old way. Today, everything you say is identical, except fewer and fewer are picking up the TV instead of tuning into the internet. And some of them,
oh, that's true.
And some of them may pick up this program. And because you and me have the time and interest and resources to put focus on this, then they can get the end product, right? And that's how we help educate our brothers and sisters. who don't have the...
No, I agree with you. That is happening. That is happening, but we still have that problem when people are tired. Yeah, and who are the ones that are tuning in here?
All sorts of people all over the world. It's interesting, by the way, that I've seen that in Bariloche people are tuning in. We've talked a lot about Bariloche, partly because of Ronald Richter and the Nazi bell. You probably Die Glocke, you know about that, right? And Humul Island.
I know very much about that, but I'm always asked... I have to be really honest, Al. These things I know about, the Dulles, the Glock, the German technology, the anti-gravitational technology. Yeah. It's all great. But if I distract myself, I can't spread myself. So that's why I don't do the finance. I focus specifically on seeing if I can track down if he really was here. And if we could prove he was here, then, as I said, that would be great, because we say, well, here's the proof, we know he was there. Right, guys, where's the money?
Yeah.
Or, as I've said before, how is it possible in this digital age of forensics and communication and access to everything that you're doing, they even know what color your knickers are, how is it possible since 1945 nobody has tracked down these funds?
There's enormous wealth, yes.
Where is it?
Yeah.
They know where it is because they're managing it and it's growing. So if it was legitimate that they were looking for it, they didn't know where it was, they would have found it, but they haven't. Well, they have.
Absolutely. They know everything. There's no secrets anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, but that's like asking them to out themselves, right? So...
Well, of course it is. And that's the whole point. We know there's a hidden agenda. We know it's hidden. So when people sort of say, oh, why is it important? It's such a long time ago. Yes, it's very important. Because, as I say, I believe it leads to the European Union today, the agenda of the European Union, the one world government, you know, back to the Fourth Reich.
Bilderberg, all that stuff.
Bilderberg. Have you spoken to my dear friend and colleague, Tony Goslin?
I exchanged some mails with him. I wanted to interview him, but we never got around to follow up on that. Been so preoccupied. But I have him on my radar.
He's the man to talk to.
About the heritage of all this.
About the financial trail, because that and Bilderberg. I mean, Tony really knows his stuff on that. I mean, he's really...
But I was a little disheartened because he seems to be skeptical to the survival of Hitler.
But that's okay. That's
his prerogative. But then I'm thinking if he's shutting down on such an obvious thing, maybe he's shutting down on other stuff too.
But you see, that's a mistake, Al, and this is the point. I can have, for example, completely different ideas of how Bormann got here. Some will say a sub, some will say that. That's not important. That's not important. And if we focus on that, we're not going to move forward. And as you said, well, Tony doesn't believe about Hitler. It doesn't matter, Al. If you want him, bring him on for the financial stuff. That's okay.
You recommend him. That's enough.
I think he's the man to talk to you about Solomon and what's his name and Dulles and all that stuff. He knows his shit on that, because he's also been following the Bilderberg organization. He's even been to the Bilderberg encampments.
Wow.
And he's a very good journalist. He was former BBC. He was also the head of the trade union for the National Union of Journalists. He's a really good journalist. So he's not just one of these guys that go out there saying they're a journalist, you know. It doesn't matter if he is... Oh, gosh, of course he died in the bunker. Okay, Tony, that's fine. But, Tony, tell us about what you know about Bilderberg. Tell us what you know about the financial trails.
No, I see your point.
So, see my point?
Very well taken.
This is good. So that's what everybody needs to think about. And this is also what we need to do on a political spectrum. I mean, look at that silly guy. The other day, we made this lovely human bond. And in 10 minutes, he said, I'm not talking to you. 10 minutes before he's saying, send, you know, like a digital hug, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Digital hug. Let's meet for a coffee. And you know you've got lots of people here that can give you the advice on this and this and this. And 10 minutes later, he said, I'm defriending you because you're anti-Semitic. I mean, how stupid is that? How sad is that?
Yeah, he probably does.
And then they talk about bigotry. So we have to, it's about tolerance. We need to accept that we can have differences of opinion. And we may not all agree. On the Hitler thing, I do not believe he committed suicide in the bunker. One, because I think he's too much of a narcissist. And two, there was no way he's going to run.
I mean, as long as they have the possibility to.
Well, yeah.
If he were serious about building the Reich, why would he give up? And by the way, we know they lay plans. We haven't talked about it today, but we've been talking about it with others before. This wasn't like a desperate... they had the plans ready long before the war. That's economically, but even plans of how to get people out of there. So...
Of course they did.
So when you say the British extracted him, then probably that was not a part of their plan. The Germans. So that must probably have been against Bormann's will. Or do you think he was in on it?
Hitler? No.
No, Bormann. When the British took him. Because I think Bormann could have gotten out without...
Bormann was a typical money man. He was a whore. It was about business. Let's do business. Why wouldn't they do business? I mean, they just get on with it.
But you think the Americans was not aware of this originally?
I think they knew, but I think maybe they might have been bent backwards in that Churchill might have said to them, okay, back off, you know nothing, because remember, you've got Barbie, you've got Reinhard Gehlen, you've got Operation Paperclip, because I don't think the Americans really, really understand how many of these chaps were taken in and then made heroes in the community. I mean, the V2 rocket. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I'm wondering about his movements when he's loose. Do you think, and I don't know, do you have any evidence or circumstantial evidence or signs or whatever of his movements until his death?
Circumstantial evidence, he spent a couple of years in Argentina, but he was constantly crossing over to Chile, to Brazil, to Paraguay. So he was moving around.
Yeah.
He wasn't really static.
He was busy, obviously, doing stuff.
Yeah, he was very busy. He was in and out. And of course, he's not stupid. You don't sit the sitting duck. You're not going to sit there. You've got to keep moving. And he, particularly after the Mossad kidnap, that's when they all did the bunk. That's where Argentina became a no-no place. Because they knew they no longer had the protection here.
Hang on. Wasn't there a coup against Perón?
Well,
I think there was actually. And if Perón was removed, then he wouldn't be safe. No one of them would be safe anymore, right?
Well, the thing was, when the kidnapping of Eichmann took place, it was completely without the knowledge of the Argentine intelligence services. And there was a lot of anger at the time. You're talking about the coup d'etat in 1962. What are you talking about? Yeah, well, there were various coups d'etats in bloody Argentina. I mean, they do it all the time.
Yeah, but the point is that Perón wasn't constantly in charge there. There were periods where he wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
And at some point, they attacked Colonia Dignidad, and people to get from Colonia Dignidad, they went over to Argentina. But the thing is that if they don't have their people, I mean, they were safe under Pinochet in Chile, and they were safe under Perón in Argentina. But if they don't have their protectors anymore, then they need to change bases, right? They need to move about. So I was just wondering if Bormann maybe left after Perón was out. That would be prudent of him.
Let's think about, well, I don't know. He came backward and forth. Well, he was in office until 50. So, yeah, I suppose, well, no.
Yeah, but then he came back again, right? So he had...
It doesn't matter that he came back, and it doesn't matter that he was actually sitting as president at the time, because he went in and out, and the last time he was there until, 1974? 1972 or 74, I can't remember, 73, 74.
No.
The point is, Perón was still there. He still had his network in there. Just because he's no longer the president doesn't mean that he cannot protect Bormann.
Good point.
Because they have the network. That network is deep. When I spoke to, when I asked the Commissioner Colotto about this extraction, this kidnapping of Adolf Eichmann, he said it was an absolute, they were fuming here, the Argentine intelligence services, irrelevant of who was the president at the time. Like, how dare you come onto our territory and take someone? And it doesn't even just matter about Perón. They were all Nazi sympathizers. They all admired Nazi Germany. When I say all, generally. Yeah. They admired Germany.
People on top, at least.
Because they wanted to associate themselves with high technology and smartness and brilliance and also this innate inferiority complex that the Argentines have.
Yeah.
And have always had.
And notwithstanding all the money they would get from having Bormann on board.
Yeah. Because remember, we've also got Richter that came over and started doing his program with Perón. Remember? So they were doing their atomic program. I mean, there was all sorts of things that was going on.
Yeah, and I heard that Evita's charity was laundering of Bormann money too. So they had many vested interests.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I don't have any evidence of that. It could be, could not be, but it's something that I'm not going to be able to find out. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
Yeah, that's the money trail. So
yeah. So I mean, of course the thing was, I was told that she never met Bormann. Perón met, and he met in this little house that he had. It was a weekend house that was actually given to him by a German. And it was by Rudy, what's his name? Oh my God, it'll come to me in a moment. Who was a German who was working here for Perón in the intelligence services. And he said that the meeting was like not a formal meeting, obviously. It was a covert meeting, a civilian meeting. What was his name? Rudy, I can't remember. Remind me.
Okay, well, if it comes to you, it comes to you. But
Rudy, it will come to me, not Rudy Richter. It's another one. Anyway, he was came over from Germany and he worked for Perón, and he set all this up. So I don't think she was really that involved with that. This was something, and remember, it's a very macho country. I don't believe that she didn't have all this power. She was just a figurehead that was.
No, they probably just used.
Yeah.
If they used it, they just used her. She probably didn't even know where the money came from.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't very clever. She was manipulative, but she wasn't very clever.
I see your point. But you said you thought he went out in '68. How do you believe he died?
What I've gathered from second and primary testimony. What they believe was that he got sick, and they believe it was probably either pancreatic or stomach cancer. It was something like that. And when he got sick, he then went to his friend in Paraguay, who was Mengele. Mengele was back in Paraguay. He would have left here much earlier than that. I'm saying he probably died. I don't know. You have to think about the state of the corpse, remember? People assume that a body turns into bones in a few weeks. No, it doesn't. It takes a long time. And of course, it depends on what environment it is. We know that. But he'd been dead a few years by the time that the bones went into...
And they didn't cremate it.
Why would
That's probably because they needed it to debunk...
They needed it.
To debunk the...
They needed it to put him back to where he was supposed to be.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's another reason they let him run to do stuff. Like he's like a transmitter, isn't he? You let him go, you know where he's meeting Mengele, you know what he's doing, you know who he's talking to. I mean, that's like the ideal to have somebody out there doing all your stuff for you. He's a tracker. So I believe he went back, he got sick, couldn't get well. He died in Paraguay, and then he was buried in the local cemetery in Itau in Paraguay, where Mengele had a house, and it's documented he had a house there. The beautiful thing is nobody really wants to go there, and this red clay, what was found, that the skull was encased in, which went into the original autopsy report, is exotic to Germany. It's exotic to there. Why would he have this red clay that is local to Paraguay, whereas actually where Mengele was? So, there is just simple facts that somebody should be saying, well, there's no way he would have got red clay if he was buried in Berlin. Well, it's not the colour of the clay, it's actual the content of the clay.
Yeah. I don't know if you know that, the way you are painting the picture, they seem a little disparate but I think Bormann had a lot of power after the war and during the 50s and the 60s. And he's a clever guy. So even if he begun as someone who owing his life to the British or the Americans, he would certainly spend some of that money, some of that power, the networks. He had people in NASA, he had people in NATO, he had people in CIA, he had Galen.
Yeah.
Obviously, he must have tried to build up his own power base.
Maybe.
And even if the people in the City of London or Wall Street thought that they were on board with him, he must certainly have tried to find some way to become independent. What do you think about that?
How you?
Mere speculation, but I mean, it's...
No, they're all very, very good points, actually. But how could he become independent?
With billions of dollars? With people loyal to him rather than to Americans?
Well, a lot of it was gone by the time that he set up those companies.
Well, but companies breed companies. We know that
All
someone...
right. Of course, let me tell you
Yeah.
something.
Mm-hmm.
How incestuous it is here. When I was looking at these companies, and I did spend some time looking at the inversions, the German inversions into Argentina.
Mm.
And of course, as you know, it started off in the 20s. They were coming over here and setting up companies. It's amazing.
Acorn and all that.
Okay. Big organizations.
Yeah.
And during the course, Abel Basti actually is a witness to this. I'm talking to you some little salon conversation here.
Mm.
I start to investigate and look at the companies that are on the list in the USA and the Treasury as being blacklisted organizations post 1945 for German money.
Mm-hmm.
And I come across 3 companies that actually have the grandfather of my name on. When I brought that up in the kitchen with Abel Basti, that we found the grandfather's name there, and Abel was having lunch because he was staying here a few days, because we were doing the Children of O.D.E.S.S.A program. I was going to mention the connections here.
Right.
And my friend came in and I said, oh, guess what I found out? I was just telling Abel that your grandfather's name comes up with the partners of the P. Dewey guys, the Ridsley brothers and everything.
Wow.
And they were financing this and in the Treasury. And he went apeshit and he said to me,
right.
my grandfather's not here to defend himself. You're not mentioning my grandfather and you take him out. And I said, but if I take him out, it's like you're asking me to, I'm supposed to be telling the truth about something. And because you're a friend of mine, I have to lie about something I've uncovered. I'm just sorry it's your grandfather. So, and I have had friends that said to me, Laurence, that was really wrong. You should have turned around and said, don't worry, won't mention it. But I couldn't do that.
Of course not. And especially not when it's just about their honor or whatever.
Yeah, because it was going into the research about different companies washing German money here, and his grandfather's name's on it.
Right.
So what was I going to do? Cut out that company? All right, it was one of maybe 12, but his grandfather's name was on 3 of them. Was I going to cut out those companies because I wasn't going to offend my friend? That was...
Yeah.
So... I don't want to go into too much detail.
No, that's okay.
Of course, because he's an innocent party. And in fact, this was actually a catalyst to a lot of problems.
I see.
Because I'm no longer persona non grata because I have what's considered broken the trust, bond of trust. In that I mentioned it to him. Well, actually, when I first knew him, he told me that when I took an interest in the investigation here, he told me because his mother's father is German and came over in the 1920s. Mm. An industrialist, and where they went, etc. And they were actually the directors of very, very big, important company here. And he used to laugh and tell me, I remember when my grandfather had a study in his house, he had a picture of Hitler on the wall. I said, oh, okay. Bear in mind that his father is British. Mm. He laughed about this and he'd say, yeah, I know. And he told me that when his grandfather died, that he remembers in the apartment, these are wealthy people, about 3 or 4 gentlemen arrived to remove all his files and all his papers.
Oh.
Everything was taken out of his study. Mm. Now, I didn't think much of this until I started to look at all the financials. We'd joke about it. I'd say, oh, you're a Nazi. And blah, the normal silly jokes that you have. And you're just sensitive that I'm digging you guys out. So this was a real skeleton in the closet.
Right.
But I decided that it would be wrong of me to edit that because of my personal connection, because then I'm doing exactly what all the others have done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I never got to the point to do that because the program got screwed up by Gerard Williams of there was a case on there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I discovered that looking at these companies that Ukigoni had on this list, and I'll tell you what the company is. One of the companies is Cellulosa Argentina, and they were the big companies that were responsible for the paper, and also another two companies. His name was on it as a director and also a shareholder. But also one of these companies, equal shareholders with my friend's grandfather, were the Rizzoli brothers, who are the Licio Gelli gang, the P2.
So now we're getting connected to that affair. Yeah.
Now it's going to get really dark. All your listeners are going to say she's completely nuts.
No, we know about the P2 scandal. That's a matter of fact.
Well, it also turns out that the one who was the director of the very big company was obviously involved with laundering German money and connected to the P2, the Licio Gelli, and the Rizzoli brothers. When he died, now the company, one of the companies he was running, had one of the biggest debts ever attributed to a private company here in the 80s. I think at the time it was considered a lot of money. It was about $400 million of debt. It was bought up by Citibank. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you buy a shell company, you are not going to keep the same directors in there because they are responsible for partly why the company's gone down the pot.
Unless it's a facade. Unless it's not a real...
Right. So they kept in my friend's uncle, who was his grandfather's son, as the director. And who is he married to? He is married to a princess of the Holy Roman Empire, Isabella Gonzaga, whose brother was involved in the Ambrosian Bank in the Vatican.
Wow.
So I'm completely talking openly here now.
Yeah.
So you get to a point you say, wow, if you look at, this is society here. If you look at society here, everybody has somebody that's connected to this spider. Because the society here, I'm talking about old aristocracy, Anglo-Argy, German, they all know each other. Everybody knows each other. They're all buried in the same cemetery.
Yeah.
I won't be buried there now. I have to go somewhere else.
No, but you know, Laurence, the thing is that it's the same even in America. And I mean, it's old money, old blood, old families.
Yeah.
It's a 0.1%ers, the movers and the shakers. And it's just, I think it's a little more visible, a little more apparent in a way in Argentina because it's kind of its own culture.
Well, there's no shame to it.
That too. They've been isolated.
There's no shame, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go into the drawing rooms of society here today, you will still see, I know it happens in England as well because I've got friends like that, but you go into the drawing rooms here and you will still find the maid in the black uniform with the white headpiece and who will serve with a silver tray. It's very old. You'd think you're stepping back 3 generations. The British here, the Anglo-Argentine community, speak better English than the actual English do. And the Germans are very, very present here. And you go to places here where they're only speaking German.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
You know that? The German club. And so this is why it's been a really big privilege for me to be here, because what I've managed to do, Al, as I said, there are lots of great researchers. I've just been very, very fortunate that I really am a boot on the ground, too, hopefully, that has been able to access, find, mix, get information and be able to be taken into the confidence of certain people. So that's really lucky.
But what do you do with everything you find out? You did mention a book that was withdrawn temporarily, but have you committed books? I've tried to find books by you. Have you done any yet?
No, and I'll tell you, the thing is this. I didn't intend, you see, I'm not one of the boys that, I don't want to say boys because they're mainly boys that are doing all this stuff, aren't they?
Yeah. Especially war history.
They're always popping books out, another book out, another book out. It's not about doing books for me. It's the investigation is ongoing. And
yeah, but at some point you have to share what you found, right?
I am sharing, and I'm here now, aren't I? Yeah. So there are reasons sometimes I'm not sharing very much, but obviously I'm getting to a point now that I'm getting ready to reveal, and sometimes sharing is also it's like a salva-vida.
Yeah.
It's a safety card for me.
Absolutely.
So I am talking to you about certain things in a way to sort of say this is going on, and obviously if something happens to me, you know why it's happened.
And for the record, you have no plan to suicide or to vanish in an accident, right?
Well, this is why I say you need to be very brave to shoot yourself. You've got to be very, very brave. I do sleep with a weapon. So if they say that, I do sleep with a weapon, because one does here, and that's an advantage one has in South America, that you can keep, and they do in the States as well.
But you know that Gestapo, people at least saying they're Gestapo, have been active as late as, was it in the 90s? Someone got a phone call, stop talking about this Hitler business. So...
Well, here's the thing. This is another thing. What I'm doing is not an attack on anybody, really. I'm not attacking anybody. I'm just trying to prove a point.
You're trying to uncover truth, which should be...
I'm not a witch. This is not a witch hunt.
No.
Because, do you know what? We're all involved in this. This is why I say to you, the goodies and the bad. Let's not pretend that these nasty Nazis, they did some terrible things. But we've also done some terrible things. We're still doing some terrible things.
Absolutely.
Israel is doing terrible things in Gaza. They're doing the same things that happened in the Polish camps and the ghettos.
Yeah.
So, let's not be hypocrites about this. So I'm not on a witch hunt.
You don't have to tell me, but you maybe have to tell someone who would get...
I'm talking generally, not...
I know. But I'm saying that you don't have to disclaim all this.
Yeah.
Because nobody who's listening... Well,
you don't know
who's listening, but...
You don't know that.
The average listener would be in sympathy with... They want to know, right? Those who doesn't want to know for whatever reasons are the people who need to hear that. But it's risky because...
Yeah, but you say
especially if you start tracing the money, that's when it's really getting risky, because that's still a hot case.
Yeah.
So where these dead people went, I think that's kind of... It's not that anyone's coming out with it by themselves, but it's kind of... It's out there already, isn't it? To some degree.
Which dead people? Sorry. Who?
Well, these people we're talking about, Bormann, Muller, they're dead now, right?
Yeah.
If this was back in the 70s, it would be even worse.
Yes.
But I think right now those parts of the story can get out. And you've said many times, I think you said it today too, that your big point is that if we can get proof beyond any possible doubt, such proof that even the blind masses who doesn't want to know can't deny it anymore.
That's right.
Then we can start with the real business, like finding out where did the business and the money go, who's in charge, who took over, all that stuff. Because then it becomes real.
Well, then you can actually then imagine that we can say, here's the evidence, he was out. So let's even forget who took him out, why it doesn't matter. The point is then you say, where did the money go? What was he doing? Why have you guys covered this up? Why have you covered this up? So lots of questions are going to be asked. And then you can focus without being shot down, whether it's Bilderberg, whether it's whatever it is, you can then focus on asking real questions. But having said that, as I said, and she is a really close girlfriend of mine, is Carol Rosin, who was the aide to Wernher von Braun in his last years. And she told me he was very distressed about the world. He was very distressed about the way things were going. He was very distressed about the state of the planet. And he was the one that gave her this legacy. And Carol went on to be the first woman that worked in the aerospace and defense. A missile consultant, etc. I mean, she's really got the credentials. And what did she do? At a certain point, she took on board all her conversations with Wernher von Braun, and she said she worked for Fairchild Industries. She was a weapons consultant even for China and for Russia. She was the one that was involved with coining the phrase of the Star Wars program. So she was well infiltrated in. We have to get Carol on here one day if you want her. She's wonderful.
We'll get
we
her
love
on.
Carol. And she said that Wernher von Braun was very distressed. First, they will invent a false enemy. They will have false flag events. They will come up with all that this old agenda, and he was worried about it. So what does she do now? She removed herself from the industrial military complex. She went as a renegade, and she works today battling for years. I actually work as her executive assistant, an honorary executive assistant, trying to help her to get through to governments that there needs to be this treaty for the prevention of the weaponization of space. Sounds very crazy, but it's going on now.
No, people have tried that since Reagan's days.
Exactly, but it needs to be done, because once the cat's out the bag, it's too late.
You can't put it back, no.
You can't. And this is where we sometimes are distracted in things that are not important. And, and this is going on and this is going on. And behind our backs, they're putting platforms up there with supposedly for defense. And we're done. That's it. It's too late. So let's not believe
But Harry mentioned something interesting. He talked about Muller and Kamler having a meeting at an office in NASA. I believe this was maybe in the 50s or the 60s. It was before the moon. So...
idea. I just realised, revealing this Muller thing, this possible lead, I'm going to have Harry Cooper on the phone tomorrow saying,
probably.
Why did you tell them in Norway? Why didn't you tell me? So there you go.
Right. No, I think he's aware of your Muller thing.
Is he? Oh, yeah, I did actually say that we think there's a possibility, but he doesn't actually know the details.
No, but you haven't gone in any details yet.
Well, I told you more than I should have told you, to be honest. And that's only because it's very late and I had a glass of wine, and that's why I said to you, loose lips sink ships, and you don't drink. You don't...
Not my ship.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Just your own.
Yeah, damn right. Yeah, okay. So
you're keeping mine afloat.
Yeah, jolly good.
Yeah, but this is interesting because I'm thinking we can tie these guys even to the JFK murder, because the murder weapon was a Mauser.
You are so ambitious, Al.
No, but not any German Mauser, but only the Mauser that was produced for Argentina. So one hypothesis is that they needed some boots on the ground, right? And so so Dulles called his old friend Bormann and got some involvement even from them.
Okay.
In fact, our take on this is that we think there is a huge network that is still in operation.
Of course there is.
Right? And they still have fascist ideals.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like there's one, like a number one, like the prisoner, right?
Yeah.
It seems more like a mafia, like it's a board of number ones. What's that?
It's a cabal.
It's a cabal, yeah. There you have it. So we agree about that then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all these corporations who are still big out there, huge corporations, cartels basically, who were loyal to Bormann, who Bormann, even before the war turned, had meetings with them.
I don't know if when you say loyal to Bormann,
well, originally to the Nazi party, but let's face it, after the war, Bormann was...
Do you know what? I don't think they gave a damn after the war. This was money. This is pure business. This is not about... all right, he was thinking the Fourth Reich and Mengele.
Yeah, but he had control files on them. He had control... This is what he did. I think it was in 42 or 43.
Yeah.
He gathered them together.
That's right.
And he ordered basically how they were going to continue operate abroad. They even started transferring money out of the country. Now, he would never let them loose if there were any possibility for them to go renegade. Besides, they put in party people in top of many of these companies. So after the war, Hitler is rotting in the shadows.
That's right.
O.D.E.S.S.A is more or less getting dismantled. Not Die Spinne, I'm calling the Bormann Brotherhood Die Spinne.
Yes.
And so then he's starting, maybe he was kept for 5 years, but at least when he's out, he's starting to pick up the loose ends and start consolidating his power. Look at what he did with Germany. He basically built up he looted single-handedly Europe. He's the genius, you know this. So,
well, of course he is, and this is what I don't understand when people say that Bormann was stupid and he was a stupid man.
This is disinformation, if you ask me.
Yes.
Hitler would never get where he was, practically speaking, if it wasn't for Bormann, economically speaking.
Absolutely.
So we have him here. We have him loose. He's now friends with the British intelligence. He's friends with the CIA. maybe not Mossad, but what could they do very early on? Israel was still fresh, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
he's protected by a whole state, the Argentinian state. So I suggest to you that he started to consolidate the cartels. And at some point, there must have been a power battle vis-à-vis City of London, vis-à-vis Wall Street. Who's controlling who?
Big question.
That's what I'm wondering.
Big question.
Yeah, and I will not even pretend to answer it today, but I want it out there.
Yes.
So where can people get your stuff, Laurence?
Well, they can't.
Well, you have a website at least.
No, not really. I have to be honest, I'm not organised like all these chaps are, these amazing websites. They bang out these pamphlets and PDFs and, oh, click on here and donate. I don't operate like that. I'm completely focused on what I'm doing. I do have some things going on, possibilities that I'd be taking this forward, but we're talking film, television, documentary, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I prefer that sort of format than books. And because I think people are visually, you can draw people in much more with visual.
In this day and age, it's all about visuals on the internet.
Yeah, but also I'm thinking even Netflix, they finance lots of very good programs today.
Yeah, but they are on the internet.
Exactly, they are. So that's where it is. As I said, I'm not in a situation that I have a great organisation. I have to sometimes make choices which are very frustrating. So there was a website started, it was under construction. I don't have a website. I don't use that sort of, there's nothing where people can go and look for whatever. I'm on LinkedIn, which is a business site. I occasionally drop a blog. I'll occasionally drop some things. And a lot of the time I put pleas out there, like...
No, but I read articles of you online. I just forgot where. Oh, you have articles about the murder of Lady Di. You have articles...
I think those are radio... I also work with John Morgan. John Morgan was the one person that actually examined all the documents on the assassination of the Princess of Wales. He probably examined more documents than anybody else on that. Is
that the guy who made a documentary? I saw a documentary, and that's when I realized.
John Morgan. Actually, they featured him in a theatrical play. John did 10 books on the Paris Connection, the Diana thing, and he and I were actually working, and we were friends, obviously, and I had great respect for him because he was like the definitive chap that knew what went down with Diana. And we decided, because he was very, very ill, had a fatal illness, and he asked me, we agreed that I was going to finish his last book on Diana, which is queued up behind this Golding book. So the Golding book has to be finished. And so that's the sort of thing I do. I do this because I'm really passionate about it.
It's a calling, isn't it? Has to be in this day and age.
Yeah, I think so, probably. But it's a calling that
30 years ago, you would be propped up as, investigative journalists were at the top of the pile. But today you risk prison if you're lucky.
Well, the thing was, I remember, and this is not trying to be immodest, I was probably one of the first journalists that mentioned about in fact, I remember when I wrote it and said it, I felt like I was saying blasphemy about 9/11.
Right. Yeah, I saw you. That's right. I saw.
Yeah, because I did some investigation on the Silverstein the insurance.
Yeah, you had some great articles about Silverstein. You're at the 9/11 Scholars Forum. That's it.
Yeah, and some of the stuff.
So people can go there for getting.
Yeah, but you'll just find there's not very much. I don't put much. There's not much put out there. You understand? So
I know, but also on Wiki's books, I see you're present with an article, and you have an article called Martin Bormann, A New Body of Evidence.
Oh, well, maybe that's just a brief, really, to give an outline to the timeline of...
Still is something they can latch onto, right?
Yes, it can. I would like them to go to that small teaser on the Golding teaser, because I think it's important about the documents, because I'd like them to see that so they can keep an eye out for that. That's important stuff. Because it's stuff that we can verify. Yeah. When we've got documents and when we've got a name and when we've got official involvement, we can say, you can't deny this. And this is one of the reasons we wanted to get the memorial for Golding. He deserved the memorial, but also they can't take that away now. They can't pretend he doesn't exist.
It's out there.
And now we can spill the beans on what happened.
And YouTube, you mentioned that. I'm at your YouTube channel now, and if they go there, oh, you have a lot of stuff here. There they can see the interview you made with George Colotto.
But that is real snippets.
Yeah,
That was
teaser.
That was a teaser, and the sound is very bad deliberately, and it was there for a purpose. It was for networks to pick up on it. To be honest, it was to try and court some finance for that investigation. And it did work, because what it did, Hunting Hitler came to me and said, we want to buy some of this now.
Yeah.
So you understand, and what I received from that, then I ploughed back into my investigation for some DNA analysis that I was doing. So that's usually when I put stuff out, is to sort of try and court in some way, but I don't do it in the way that I don't know how these boys bang these books out. That sounds awful, doesn't it?
No life, I guess.
I don't have one either. I don't really have one either. But the objective seems to be writing, but I'm not. I wish I could be doing that, but it's not how my brain works, and I find it very hard.
No, but do film at least. You have to share with the world, right? So do films, continue with putting stuff up on YouTube or whatever, and that's also a life insurance.
I tell you what I do need. I'm going to make a plea here. This is another thing, when you have budget problems, I put actually a posting on LinkedIn that I was looking for a facial recognition forensics specialist. I absolutely need somebody who I can trust. I need to present them with a couple of photographs, one of an adult, one of a child. I need to know whether they can check to see the possibility of it being one and the same person. I did get one response on that. So those are the things that block me, Al. Do you understand? I don't have an organization.
No, but listen, people, if anyone here is into that, volunteer and help crack this huge historical case. And I know there's software for that. I don't know if you even need a person today. There's software for that.
No, I need somebody independent to do that, because if I do it, you understand? Oh, she did it.
Okay, but if a guy who knows the software, at least, can...
No, you can't get... I did actually try to get the software. There is a brilliant software that was available that shows you the child to the adult and they compare them, but it's not actually available as a download. And maybe if you've got it, it's probably very expensive software. So what I'm saying is I would look for somebody who really, that is what they do. They have to have some form of formal qualification in forensics, otherwise it serves no purpose. It's a bit like a chain of custody with DNA. I can't do that. I would also ask for anybody who is in Windsor, Canada, anyone in those areas that could be useful to me, who would be prepared to be involved in a chain of custody DNA. That would also be very helpful.
Yeah, we need to get that DNA done.
Yes, and I have to be, yes. So, it's, as I say, Al, it's very difficult to move. It's very difficult to find things.
Yeah, but Laurence, we spent months tracking you down, getting hold of you. How can people get hold of you? Twitter?
Anybody can email me at, I have some other emails, but the easy one is the Gmail, which is goldeneyefilm@gmail.com.
Okay.
goldeneyefilm@gmail.com. So do email me.
In one word.
I'm not sort of recluse. I'm very happy to take calls. I'm very happy to have conversations. If obviously people really have something genuine they're concerned about, they want to talk about on this subject, which can be helpful, because we're all in this together. This is not my investigation. This is something we all need to know. So
I hope we didn't open the floodgates to hell now. Going out with an email.
Well, we'll die with our boots on, won't we? Yeah. I mean, at least.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, but better with too many than too few. So
yeah.
Contact her, guys, girls, if you want to help out or if you have something to contribute. She is an investigative journalist, and you take leads too, I guess. So
if I have any updates on the Muller thing, I will come back and tell you, chaps. Can't wait.
I want you back in the future. And also, what about, one thing is Princess Di, but what about the P2 thing? Have you delved very much into that?
Very much. Yeah, I told you. I was very, very interested in many. I mean, I think I took a fascination right back when it happened then. And that was probably one of the things that I'll tell you what started me off on my path of what I do today, my mother brought me the book, I think it was 1982, The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail.
Wow.
And that's
a classic.
Yeah, my mother brought that for me years and years ago, and I was living in Rome at the time. And I said, oh, God, that's a fat book, Mummy. And she said, you have to read this. It's marvelous. If I'm really honest, I think that book and the Roberto Calvi assassination under Blackfriars Bridge were the two key elements that really made me what I do today, because I started from them delving into all sorts of stuff, the Knights Templar, first Knights Templar, and then, of course, Opus Dei, and, P. Dewey and the Vatican Bank. And he's a very nice chap. I'm in touch with Roberto Calvi's son.
Wow.
Very, very sad, because, he knows his father was murdered.
Yeah,
and
ritually
he's been
murdered
shot.
even.
Yeah, his name's Carlos Calvi. He actually left Europe, and we are in touch. And I would say, when you're ready, he's a bit like me. He's always carrying on researching. And of course, he's got the evidence, but nobody's going to publish it because he knows they murdered his father. And it was a terrible thing, but it was all very significant. For those of you that remember the thing, Blackfriars Bridge, all the symbolism, it was all very occult. So that was the sort of thing that really started me going. And then, of course, fascination. I did a series with my partner at a company I worked for at Pinewood Studios on the history of the mafia. And of course, we got the information really from the mafia. I mean, if you want a story about the mafia, you have to talk to them.
Wow.
And Cosa Nostra, with the conditions that you don't talk about the Vatican, which is a bit frustrating, but you say, of course, and I didn't.
That's like you can't mention the main...
No, you wouldn't. But you know what's really beautiful about that? And this is the thing, and people get very shocked when I say this, about criminality. I have to say, Al, some of the chaps I met through that old school mafia, old school, it's changed now. I mean, I'm talking, 80s and everything.
The original, traditional.
Yeah, the old school.
Yeah.
If you shake hands, yes, I know they're criminals, but you know what? We've got criminals everywhere. The codes, this is the thing, it's about codes. You have a code, you do not break that code. You give a handshake and you give your honor, you give your word, it should stand. Unless there is completely no way that you can get out of something, I mean, the force...
That's just like the Intel guys, isn't it? People used to live by codes.
But it's not like that anymore. That's the whole point. It's gone. The codes are broken.
Yep.
So it's anyone's race.
Yep, all bets are off. But we are going to have a series on 9/11 in the future.
Oh, gosh. I think
yes.
that's something I have to bypass at the moment, to be honest.
But you do not want to talk about Larry Silverstein?
I would love to, but if I'm really, really honest, if I go down that path at the moment, it's going to basically obstruct what I need to be doing for Bormann with the net.
No, but focus on Bormann or whatever for now, Muller, and let's say a year...
No, I'll tell you why. I have to... This is where you have to sometimes play the game. And...
You getting in trouble with that, or? Hello? Hello.
You see, there you go.
Full circle.
The moment you mention Larry Silverstein,
yep,
the connection goes down. So
exactly.
There's my point. You see, that's basically saying, listen to what she's saying, we don't discuss it.
No, I was thinking exactly the same thing.
There you go.
But who knows what the future will bring. What about Lady Di?
The Princess of Wales. Lady Diana Spencer.
Yeah, we could talk about that in the future, can't we?
We can certainly talk about that. We can certainly talk about Mohammed's organisation. We can talk about how Mohammed is a really good man and how he's got completely set up.
Yeah.
And how his son he wasn't directly murdered, he was indirect. But I will say about the Diana thing, you see, here's the thing, very, very quickly. People assume that Diana was assassinated because she was dating an Arab. That's what they say, an Arab. It's much more complex than that. And you probably know what it is. The thing was, what is the main catalyst for this fake war on terror? And that is keeping the Palestinian people of Gaza in that ghastly situation, because it's a breeding ground for fundamental Islamic terrorism. The flag, the challenge on most genuine fundamentalists is because what they're doing to the Palestinian people. So if you break and open the gates of Gaza and close down that ghastly camp and let those people out and have fresh water and all the things that they deserve in any civilized society, they lose the place where they can groom and manipulate fundamentalists that are used for this fake war on terror.
Yeah.
Diana, the Princess of Wales, was the most famous woman in the world. And she was just as powerful as Mother Teresa. So if Diana said something, it was front page. When Diana said, let's get rid of these anti-personal landmines, which that was the start. They got rid of her because she was getting involved in and that's why they called her a loose cannon. A loose cannon coming from the old thing, being on the ships when the cannons were not strapped down.
Yeah.
And she got involved with the movement, and people rallied behind her. People learned mainly about anti-personal landmines in Angola and Africa, all around Africa, because of Diana's campaign. And what does she do? Principally due to her and her name, that they actually banned the production of these. And who were the main producers of this? France, Britain, Germany. Massive losses in weapons, okay? So they knew, it's a bit like Hendrix and it's a bit like Lennon. You know, they're dangerous people, because if Hendrix said something, I mean, they murdered him. Hendrix said something, or if John Lennon said something, it's going to be everybody that follows him like, yeah, listen to John Lennon, listen to Jimi Hendrix. So when she was dating Dodi Al-Fayed, the concern was that Dodi Al-Fayed was pro-Palestinian. Dodi Al-Fayed was, the next campaign that Diana was going to do was probably going to be about the inhumane treatment of the people in Gaza. And she would have drawn attention to that, and she would have swung it that people demand that Israel stop this, and Egypt open up on the Rafah border, that they stop this dreadful concentration camp of hell that's still there today. And that would have stopped all the breeding ground for these fundamentalists, which are then headhunted.
Notwithstanding challenging Israel's agenda, or the Zionist part of Israel's agenda.
Absolutely. It would totally topple it down. They need it. They have to have these crazy Islamic lunatics.
The good enemy, right?
Yeah, they need them.
The good enemy.
And here's the thing, people say, no, what happens is, as you know, these are genuine crazies. These are lunatics. Normally they're very vulnerable mentally, and they're headhunted and they're taken and they are controlled, just like Klaus Barbie, or a bit different. He was actually directly working for them. But then they're manipulated and funded themselves by our services to go and do these awful things, to draw more attention, to lose more of our freedoms, to, you know, the normal political agenda. And it's just really sad, Al. I sometimes you think, you know, when I saw that, and I'm sure as most of us here did, when I saw the images of those children, oh my God. I mean, I'm a mother, but even if you're not a parent.
Which one? I mean, there's so many children. Talking about Syria now?
Yeah, the last one last week, with those children, you know, gasping.
Oh, the gas attack?
Little boys, the gas attack, the chemical. Yeah. I mean, it's just, who are we? What's happened to us? It's just horrific. So in some ways, I live in this sort of semi-third world country where the internet doesn't work, as you noticed this afternoon.
But it's a safe part of the world, at least.
But do you know what? You don't have, I don't know how it is in Norway, but I know in the United Kingdom up to a few years ago that due to the CCTV, I think they said you were photographed more or less sort of 380 times a day if you walk around London. It's probably more than that now.
Yeah.
Although, consider that between the hotel and the Alma Tunnel, the Princess of Wales is not one photograph on the CCTV. So,
Good point.
You know,
Good point.
That's interesting. That was one of the things I raised. But anyway, we'll do that another day.
We will. And I must say, I always, you know, I never paid any real attention to that. I always thought that was like a ridiculous thing. Like, what? Is that a conspiracy even now? But then I saw more or less...
What are you saying about what, Diana?
Yeah, the whole Diana thing. I think people are prone to dismiss it if they're not putting some attention to it. But what happened was that I accidentally saw this brilliant documentary out there. You probably know who's behind and whatever. But I don't remember.
The killing of Diana. What was it? Which one was it?
Yeah, that may be the top. What's the alternative? Is there any other alternative titles out there?
It was the one that didn't get E&O insurance, and they banned it from distribution worldwide.
I think it may be the banned one.
That's
actually.
right.
I think it's the banned documentary about Diana,
Yeah.
and that was enough to entice me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what this is about now, once and for all.
Yeah.
So I sat down, and my jaw dropped. I realized, geez, this is real corruption, real criminality. And so, so if you can elaborate on that, we'll have you back for that. We'll keep Silverstein safe for now. There's so much other stuff to discuss.
I've sort of thought it's time to take a bit of a break from that lot.
That's your prerogative.
Yeah, especially as I need to sort of go to possibly Los Angeles for some stuff that I need to get. So I think...
And I need to get to New York soon. So, and that's the belly of the beast.
Well, there you go.
But you have the articles out there, so the perceptive people can check your articles. They are out there, even if
of course they can. But I'm not going. There's certain, as I said to you, sometimes you've got to play. You know, it's like rushing in there and smashing everything. It works for a day, and then you're screwed. And we need to find a balance, and we've got to do slow and sure, and we've got to. We mustn't lose opportunity.
And we need to ally. We need allies. Can't do it alone, you know.
Yes, and you can't shut down. And sometimes you do have to protect people that may be enemies, may be considered an enemy. For example, on the Bormann investigation, not for any reason, but there are a lot of people. There's a lot of hatred out there. And I could have easily blown some really cheap stories and got them out there and got paid masses for some of the people that have been in touch with me, particularly this lady in the USA. But that's not the objective. But this is the thing. You've got to protect those people. And it's not their fault.
Yeah, if you had done that, you couldn't go further with your investigation, right? So.
But not only that, but this is the thing. A lot of the journalists today, I hate to say this, are whores. It's about making a quick buck.
And shills, yeah.
And, obeying your master. And it's a
journalist. I don't know they find some pretty faces and they put them out to read what they're served. I don't know if that's called journalism, really. So
I think it's an insult, really. Isn't it an insult to the readers? It's like television.
Yeah.
It's become insulting. The BBC used to be like the flagship of British intellectual programming, and now it's just laughable. It's an insult
But still, people are forced to pay for it.
Yeah, and people there was a few years ago people saying, okay, we should all say nobody's to pay for it, but of course they do, don't they? They worry about it. So anyway, it's a mess, isn't it? So we have to stay focused. Now you see when we had this conversation this evening, I've gone all over the place, and that's exactly why on the Bormann thing, dealing with the post World War II German occupation of South America and the financial institutions, I have to stay focused. I don't look at the money. I try to find the evidence that he escaped. And as I said, when I get there, I'll hand it over to you lot, and you lot can find out where the money is. And I'll watch and listen.
Yeah, let them put their ass on the line on that. Yeah. But listen, you have an open mic here, okay? So you contact me.
That's really, really kind. And maybe when I've got an appeal, like as I said, don't forget somebody, please, even if you're a student of forensics, but you must be not just somebody at home, because it's very important, because I need credibility. Otherwise, if we... you may be great at it, but if you match these two faces, and then people are going to ask questions, well, they're not credible. And the most important thing in this investigation is to keep the credibility. It's very important that they can't shoot us down. You never give them an excuse for that.
Good point.
Al, thank you very, very much. It's been
a pleasure, yeah.
And I just want to say to the audience, thank you so much. I'm sorry that I go off on tangents, but, we don't have a real brief. We're having a conversation. And
they used
obviously...
to it.
Are they? Are they?
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
are.
you've had guests that are more sort of going off on tangents.
This is how we do it.
Oh, really?
We mellow you down with cozy chats, and we get all the hot info,
Okay.
and we edit it into something very, very
Well, I
interesting.
didn't give you very much, but you just get a brief, and then maybe we can get more detailed on different subjects.
Everything is
And I
relative.
will come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I hope your internet will be better now that I'm off the line.
As long as we don't mention Larry Silverstein.
Or Martin Bormann, that's where it began, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, God bless, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks again to Laurence for opening up to us, sharing her interesting research and views. Let's round off this episode with a few quotes. "The more we do to you, the less you seem to believe we are doing it," said Josef Mengele. "We know the Russian methods exactly. I haven't the faintest intention of being taken prisoner by the Russians," said Heinrich Gestapo Muller. "Situation very serious. Those ordered to rescue the Führer are keeping silent. Disloyalty seems to gain the upper hand everywhere. Reichskanzlei is a heap of rubble." Is the message wired to General Admiral Karl Dönitz from Bormann in the bunker at April 28, 1945. This clearly verifies that there indeed was plans to rescue Hitler, and even that the orders were already out. For more context to this quote, check out our program called An A-Bomb for Herr Bormann, where Carter Heydrich substantiate that this message was a red herring to throw Dönitz and anyone listening in off track to his own imminent escape. Now, I have an update for you. We have launched a separate channel at YouTube where you will find short forum clips. These are either previews from pending releases, teasers from old shows, or bonus stuff from our website that are dumped to the public. So even if you subscribe to our main channel, you will not get everything from that. So do subscribe to our new channel. Besides, we need the ratings, where whether you have donated or not, subscribing to both our channels at YouTube is of tremendous help for us. Without boring you with the technical details, it's sufficient to say that the more subscribers and views we get, the more possibilities we get, and the easier our work will be. Also, if you cannot afford supporting us economically, allowing the ads on our programs to be shown and preferably played out, and even better be clicked on, will also help us out. And of course, since we have limited resources, word of mouth is our primary modus operandi, so do spread whatever of our shows you enjoy to your network and at social media. And remember, if you have donated, you can sign up at our website and then log in to the Patreon section to access more stuff than you will find at YouTube. A huge majority of our patrons have not done this yet, so if you are one of them, now you know about it. That's it for tonight. Stay tuned for more shows in this series. Until then, I remain your sincere host, Al. Thanks to our patrons and my team. Be seeing you.
Who is number one?